Hey, my name is Marie, and in today's video I would like to give you a little insight into the post-structuralist theory. It is not a closed theory, but rather an analytical approach that encompasses various anti-essentialist approaches to understand and to look at our social world. In this video, I will only outline the broad perspective of post-structuralism. Otherwise, the content would go beyond the scope. If you have any questions or if there's something you would like to know more about, please just leave me a comment and I can come back to this in one of the next videos. Post-structuralism is the general title for a particular way of thinking and writing. The term describes a philosophical stance that developed in France during the 1960s. As the term post-structuralism already suggests, the thinking of its representatives is characterized by a critical engagement with the beliefs and the methods and the theory of structuralism. The post-structuralist positions that have emerged during this debate is very broad. Famous people associated with post-structuralist thought include Roland Barthes, Jacques Derrida, Jean Baudrillard, Judith Butler, and Ernesto Laclau. Post-structuralism does not have a fixed program or a fixed framework, but rather characteristic features. Authors associated with this term vary, and very few of them would describe themselves as being post-structuralist. To work with post-structuralism means to invent it new. It is too diverse to subsume. Nevertheless, some common features and some common characteristics can be identified in the different positions. First of all, it should be mentioned that post-structuralist thinkers are mostly concerned with the medium of language and with text in a broader sense. They see language and discourse as a way to understand, describe, and construct our world. The whole structure of thinking and acting is based on communication and thus on language. There is nothing outside of the discourse, or if there is, we are not able to articulate it. The approaches criticize the dominant notion that language accurately depicts and represents our social reality. Post-structuralist perspectives challenge this notion by saying that the depiction and representation and interpretation through language is always imperfect and contingent. The critique refers to the theory of Ferdinand de Saussure, who was one of the founders of structuralist theory. He dealt with language as an ordering system of signs, especially with the relationship between imagination and the phonetic representation. De Saussure sees language as a system of signs with certain rules. A linguistic sign consists of the symbol and the phonetic representation. There is an arbitrary relationship between the signifier and the signified. When we say horse, for example, it is not self-evident that we mean horse. The phonetic representation horse could have been also for a book or a sofa or for freedom. Furthermore, there are words that have several meanings. In other language, we have different phonetic representations that evoke the same ideas, but in a different language and in a different context. In general, there are only differences in language that create meaning. The understanding of a term arises from the definition of what it is not. A chair, for example, can only receive its meaning by the definition of that it is not a table, not a sofa, not a door, and so on and so on. The organization of the signs are the condition for meaning. Important are the differences, and not so important what are said in the relation of differences. We have to imagine the system of linguistic sign as a network of signifiers who are all interwoven and dependent on each other. Since the attribution of meaning does not refer to a positive inherent content of the object that has to be defined, but that the meaning is deriving from the negative distinction of what it is not, the meaning can never be absolutely fixed or clear. There's always room for interpretation and for different meanings. And this is called contingency. Poststructuralism claims that due to the arbitrariness of the meaning and the openness of the system, there is no objectivity and also social facts have no necessity. While structuralism assumes that there is a universal truth with a current system of meanings that is fixed, poststructuralism distances itself from this perspective. Poststructuralist approaches take the position that there is no universal truth due to the arbitrary ascription of meanings. Poststructuralism draws attention to the power structures in societies and also the power structures that we have in communication, social relation, and language. These power structures influence, of course, how meaning is constructed in discourse. And these power structures also influence which narratives are privileged and recognized and which one are neglected or left unheard. Poststructuralist thinkers claims that there are no natural categories and that there is no natural order, but that these power structures in society discursively frame how the categories develop over the time. Examples for these categories are female versus male, good versus evil, natural versus artificial. Poststructuralists question these discursive structures and these natural categories and denaturalize and deconstruct them and how their meaning have developed over the time. So, what are the implications of poststructuralism for research? Poststructuralism seeks to question and to deconstruct the existing knowledge regimes and also the natural categories. With this poststructuralist perspective, for example, we can denaturalize the categories of gender, female and male, and show that the categories are not ahistorical and that they changed over the time in the past. And of course, this means that they can also change in the future. Poststructuralism also means that we as researchers do not have a neutral standpoint of conducting our research or looking at the world, but that we are also involved in the discourse and that we are influenced by the existing power structures in our way of understanding and interpreting the world. There are different approaches to conduct poststructuralist research, and I cannot go much into detail about the different methods. Important to mention is the deconstruction of Derrida, the genealogy of Foucault, and then we have different ways of discourse analysis, different theories that have developed over the time, for example, from Laclau and Mouffe. The approaches are reconstructive, so they try to analyze and reconstruct history or the history of categories and meanings. By that, they try to show the contingency of history and also the contingency of meaning ascription. At the same time, they try to reveal the power relations in societies and how they shape the discourse and our social reality. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, you can of course subscribe to my channel. And this time all the literature recommendation you can find in the description if you want to know more about this topic.